Mr. Streeting, you've lost 197 of the 285 seats you were defending. That's 2/3. So you're now less popular now than you were in 2021.
When a Labour MP says we need time to fix the country, should we believe them? This explosive GB News interview exposes what happens when politicians face real scrutiny instead of softball questions. Watchers News host Camilla refuses to accept empty promises about NHS waiting lists and grooming gang scandals. The moment when Wes Streeting admits certain Labour policies are unpopular reveals everything about their actual priorities. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favour. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great. Thank you so much. Now back to the video.
If I think about the NHS, for example, where we are making real progress, waiting lists have fallen 6 months in a row, the 2 million more appointments we promised. Well, look, Camilla, I think as the Prime Minister said over the weekend, people voted for change at the last general election, and at the moment people aren't feeling that change, and I think that's reflected in the results on Thursday.
When politicians face genuine pressure instead of the standard media softballs, their carefully constructed narratives often collapse. This is precisely what happened when Camilla confronted Labour's Wes Streeting about his party's significant loss of seats in recent elections. Rather than allowing him to brush it off, she pressed him on why voters aren't feeling the change they were promised. Streeting's response revealed the first major contradiction. He tried to showcase NHS improvements as evidence of Labour's success, citing falling waiting lists for 6 months and the delivery of 3 million appointments, which exceeded their initial promise of 2 million.
In our first year, we actually delivered 7 months early. We're now standing at over 3 million. If you're one of the people who's come off the waiting list, you'll be delighted. But if you're one of the 7 million cases still on the waiting list...
But this immediately clashed with the reality millions of Brits experience daily, the frustration of endless waits for basic medical care. The tension escalated when Camilla quoted Streeting's own Labour colleague, Dan Carden, who criticised the current government for low wages, high bills, crumbling infrastructure, and broken promises. This internal contradiction exposed the fractures within Labour's messaging. Interestingly, Streeting agreed with Carden completely, stating, "I agree with Dan on every single word you've just read out there. And I think that's the impatience people are feeling, and that's why people are hungry for change." This admission revealed another glaring inconsistency. Streeting simultaneously claimed they needed more time due to multiple crises inherited in July, while suggesting substantial improvements were already happening. It's the classic political doublespeak, taking credit for minor improvements while blaming predecessors for ongoing problems. Streeting's body language throughout this exchange told its own story. As Camilla refused to move on without addressing these contradictions, his composure visibly deteriorated. The practiced politician began to show cracks in his polished facade, especially when confronted with the disconnect between government statistics and public experience. Perhaps most revealing was Streeting's acknowledgement that those still on waiting lists, approximately 7 million people, would likely dismiss government claims of improvement, thinking, "Don't tell me things are improving, I'm still waiting." This rare moment of political candour directly undermined Labour's public messaging about NHS success. The exchange perfectly demonstrates how prepared, persistent questioning exposes the gap between political promises and implementation reality. When Streeting's statements about NHS waiting lists were held up against Labour's previous positions on healthcare management and improvement timelines, the contradictions became impossible to ignore. This wasn't just political theatre, it was accountability journalism, forcing a senior politician to confront his party's failure to deliver the change voters were promised. The tension in the interview escalated when Camilla shifted to one of the most controversial topics in British politics today, the grooming gang scandal. She directly questioned Streeting about Lucy Powell's response when someone raised legitimate concerns about the ethnic patterns in these crimes. Powell had dismissed these concerns as dog whistle politics, a response that many viewed as prioritising political correctness over child safety. Streeting's defence of Powell appeared rehearsed and uncomfortable. He claimed she had made a mistake and misspoke, the standard political language for acknowledging an error without actually confronting the substance of the issue. What was truly revealing wasn't his defence of Powell, but his reluctance to address the serious underlying concern. Why Labour politicians seem so hesitant to acknowledge demographic patterns in these crimes. As Camilla pushed harder on this point, Streeting's discomfort became increasingly apparent. He tried to pivot to a technical discussion about ensuring ethnicity data is properly recorded in crime statistics. This claim directly contradicted Labour's previous resistance to collecting such information, another glaring inconsistency that exposed their political manoeuvring on sensitive cultural issues. The pattern became clear. Labour politicians apologise for mistakes when caught making politically damaging statements, but their fundamental approach to these sensitive issues remains unchanged. This creates a troubling disconnect between what they say publicly and the policies they actually implement. Just as Streeting thought he had navigated away from this minefield, Camilla switched to another controversial topic: gender politics. She questioned him about the North East London Foundation Trust's guidance on gender-critical views, which describes anyone holding such views as a TERF, and claims it's unlawful to exclude transgender women from women-only spaces. These are positions Labour has tacitly supported. Streeting was clearly unprepared for this line of questioning. His response lacked the political polish he had displayed earlier, revealing the deep inconsistencies between Labour's public statements and their actual policies on these cultural flashpoints. When pressed on multiple fronts about these sensitive issues, Streeting couldn't maintain the carefully constructed narrative. The interview exposed how Labour's approach to governing differ significantly from their campaign promises. They've simply repackaged the same political evasions they once criticised their predecessors for. Camilla's refusal to accept rehearsed talking points forced Streeting to acknowledge policy contradictions his party typically avoids discussing in public. This exchange demonstrated exactly why politicians fear genuine accountability journalism. It exposes the gap between what they say and what they do. This interview provides a rare glimpse into political reality that most media outlets fail to deliver. When Camilla refused to accept Streeting's rehearsed answers, the facade crumbled, revealing the contradictions that define Labour's governance. They blame predecessors while claiming credit for minor improvements, apologise for mistakes without changing approaches to sensitive issues, and maintain public positions that conflict with their actual policies. The real question isn't about supporting Labour or any other party, it's whether we demand this level of scrutiny for all politicians regardless of affiliation. The moment we accept different standards of accountability based on our political preferences, we surrender our right to genuine representation